Semrush reported that HubSpot's blog lost roughly 72% of its monthly organic traffic during 2024, but the pages closest to revenue largely held. HubSpot continued ranking for CRM, marketing automation, and marketing software, while articles about famous quotes, shrug emojis, and job interview weaknesses lost visibility. That changes the story. This isn't just about HubSpot's SEO strategy failing. HubSpot had already built products, email audiences, video channels, brand demand, and a sales operation around that traffic that it generated. The bigger problem is what other companies learned from HubSpot. They copied the visible playbook: keyword research, topic clusters, publishing volume, and rising traffic targets, all while forgetting to copy the commercial system that made those visits valuable in the first place. Now look, I'm not trying to convince you to stop creating content the way that HubSpot does, but rather which parts of HubSpot's playbook are worth copying and which parts that can leave your business exposed. There's 3 ways to test that. Is the content connected to a real buying decision? Does it contain expertise a competitor cannot easily reproduce? And does that attention lead somewhere your company controls? Get those wrong, and rising traffic can hide a weakening marketing system. HubSpot helped turn content marketing into a repeatable growth system. Find the questions people search, publish useful answers, add a call to action, then keep going until thousands of pages bring people into your business every month. By 2017, HubSpot had accumulated more than 10,000 blog posts. When growth slowed, the company reorganized that library into topic clusters, removed overlapping pages, and made organic search demand a more deliberate part of its publishing decisions. For a long time, that system worked extraordinarily well. The mistake was not using search demand. The mistake was allowing search demand to stand in for business value, because those two are not the same thing. A page about famous quotes can attract vastly more traffic than a page comparing CRM platforms, while contributing far less to an actual buying decision. As this playbook spread across B2B marketing teams often focus on the easiest parts to measure: keyword volume, rankings, organic sessions, and month-over-month growth. Those numbers really fit nicely into a dashboard, but they don't really tell you whether a visitor has a problem your company can solve. This is the first test to apply to your own content. Where does this topic sit in the buyer's journey? Not every article needs to promote a service directly, and buyer relevance does not mean someone has to read the entire page from beginning to end. That's rarely how tactical B2B content works, except if you're HubSpot. For example, someone researching CMMC compliance may scan the page, read one section about assessment requirements, forward the checklist to their IT director, and then leave. That can still be a successful visit. The page's job is to not hold attention like an article in a magazine. Its job is to reduce uncertainty at a specific point in the buying process. So the question you should ask is not whether people are going to read your page from top to bottom, but rather, what does the right buyer need to understand, verify, or do after finding it? The page helps them do that and makes your company more credible in the process. It has a business role even when nobody reads a word, but you still should be able to explain the page's job. Does it help the buyer understand a problem? Does it compare solutions, evaluate a provider, resolve an objection, or take the next step after they have already shown intent? Before approving a topic, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. Who is this specifically for? What decision does it help them make? And where they should logically go next. And if the answer is a lot of people search for it, you do not yet have a content strategy. You have a traffic opportunity. Sometimes that's an opportunity worth taking. Broad content can earn links, introduce the brand, and maybe build an audience. But it should earn its place through a defined business role, and not because the search volume number happens to be large. A practical way to enforce this is to store every proposed topic on 3 dimensions: relevance to what you sell, proximity to a real buying decision, and the value of the next action the visitor can take. The highest volume topic will not always win. That is the point. Because HubSpot's losses showed that traffic disconnected from a buying journey can disappear without taking the commercial core with it. But buyer relevance is only the first test. HubSpot lost visibility because other sources had a stronger reason to answer the question. So HubSpot's domain became so powerful, it could rank far beyond the software it sold. And that advantage looked like authority on the surface, but it also created a dangerous assumption. Once a website becomes trusted enough, it can keep expanding into almost any adjacent topic. The pages replacing HubSpot exposed the weakness in that idea. For instance, in Excel-related searches, Google increasingly preferred Microsoft's own product pages and support content. Adobe gained visibility in areas tied to its products. Reddit gained visibility where people wanted direct experience rather than another polished explainer article, which makes sense. If someone wants to know how a particular Excel function works, Microsoft has a stronger reason to answer than a marketing software company, even when the marketing company has a more powerful website. That's the second lesson from HubSpot's decline. General authority is not the same as the credible right to answer. Google increasingly rewards sources that sit closer to the product, problem, or lived experience behind the query. AI systems create the same pressure because they can now combine generic explanations from several sources without needing to send a single click to any one of them. Now, a competent writer can summarize public information, but that is quickly becoming the easiest kind of content to replace. So the second test for your content is, why should this answer come from your company? Not why a keyword is relevant, not why your writer can produce a better article. What does your company know, see, or prove that another website cannot reproduce in an afternoon of research? That could be patterns from your client work, original data that you've collected over time, a documented process, screenshots from real implementations, a case study showing what changed, specific mistakes your team repeatedly encounters, or a trade-off that only becomes visible after doing the work in practice. Here's the simplest way to test it. Remove your company name from the page and imagine a competitor publishing it tomorrow. Would anything feel false? Would any claim require experience they do not have? Would any example, process, or conclusion clearly belong to your business? If the answer is no, the content may be accurate and relevant, but it is not defensible, and that matters beyond rankings. Buyers do not trust a company because it explained the same topic more eloquently than anyone else. They trust it because the explanation reveals experience, judgment, and evidence that would be difficult to fake. So when you plan a page, do not ask only, what should we cover? Ask, what can we contribute that changes the quality of the answers from everything that has already been written about? That is the difference between content that fills a search results and one that strengthens your position in the market. But even relevant, defensible content remains exposed when Google is the only way anyone ever finds it. At this point, HubSpot's strategy appears to have one obvious failure. It built millions of visits on a page that were weakly connected to the product, then lost those visits when Google and AI systems became less willing to reward broad, replaceable answers. But that is where the story changes. HubSpot's traffic collapsed, but HubSpot, the company, did not. By the second quarter of 2025, HubSpot said blog traffic generated only 10% of its leads. YouTube leads had grown to 96% year over year, newsletter leads had increased 50%, and its podcast network reached 5.2 million listeners during that quarter. HubSpot already turned years of search visibility into products, subscribers, audiences, brand recognition, repeat visitors, and sales opportunities. Google was still important, but it was no longer the only door to their business. That reveals the third lesson companies copied incorrectly. A ranking is not the asset. It is access to an audience that somebody else controls. The asset is what becomes stronger after the visitor arrives. A subscriber you can reach again, a buyer who views a relevant case study, a prospect who moves from an educational article into a service page, a salesperson who uses the content to answer an objection, or a brand that buyers remember when they begin comparing providers. This does not mean that every article needs to have an aggressive call to action. It means every important piece of content should have a planned destination and a life beyond its original ranking. So apply a third test. What does your business capture from this attention? There are three parts to that. First, the next step. After reading the page, can the visitor naturally move to a related service, comparison, case study, tool, newsletter, video, or conversation? Second, the repeat relationship. Can you reach that person again through email, subscribers, remarketing, social audiences, or another channel they choose to join? Third, distribution beyond Google. Can the content support a sales conversation, become a video, strengthen a proposal, educate an existing client, or reach buyers through partners and email? If the page loses its ranking and immediately becomes invisible, it was never much of an asset. It was a rented entrance. And that is where smaller B2B companies need to be careful. HubSpot could lose a large share of its informational traffic because it had a freemium product, a major email audience, 10 YouTube channels, podcasts, sales infrastructure, and years of brand demand around the commercial categories it served. Most companies that copied HubSpot did not copy that system. They copied the broad editorial calendar approach. So do not judge content only by how many entrances it creates. Measure whether visitors move into commercial pages, subscribe to your newsletter, return to your website, influence people, support sales, or begin searching for your company by name. That is how search traffic becomes a business asset rather than a temporary spike on everyone else's platform. And once you combine this capture test with buyer relevance and defensible expertise, you have a practical way to decide which content to keep, which content to improve, and which content should stop receiving budget. Now, the important lesson from HubSpot is not that broad content is useless, that blogging is finished, or that every page needs to generate a lead directly. It is that traffic volume cannot tell you whether a page is strengthening the business. And to find that out, you need to audit your content using the same 3 tests we have just applied to HubSpot. First, buyer relevance. Does the page help a real prospect understand the problem, compare options, evaluate a provider, resolve an objection, or take a meaningful next step? Second, defensibility. Does it contain evidence, experience, data, judgment, or examples that another company could not reproduce simply by assigning the same keyword to a competent writer? Third, business capture. Does the page move attention into something your company owns or can measure? A subscriber, a returning visitor, a commercial page, a case study, a sales conversation, or a resource your team can continue distributing? Store each page from 1 to 5 on all 3. You do not need a complicated attribution model to begin. You need an honest view of what job the page performs. Once you have those stores, most of your content will fall into one of 4 categories. Keep it when the page is relevant and defensible and connected to a clear business outcome. Upgrade it when a topic matters to buyers, but the content still sounds like something any competitor could have published. Add client evidence, original examples, expert commentary, screenshots, real trade-offs, or a clear point of view. Reconnect it when the content is useful but isolated. Do that by improving internal links, adding the correct next step, distributing it through email or video, and making sure sales can use it when the same question comes up in conversation. And lastly, consolidate it or retire it when the page attracts the wrong audience, contains nothing distinctive, and contributes no measurable value beyond the traffic itself. The last category is where companies often hesitate, because deleting or merging content can make the traffic chart smaller, but a smaller chart is not necessarily a weaker marketing system. It just means the remaining content is doing a clearer job. HubSpot's mistake was not publishing thousands of pages. Their mistake was allowing traffic potential to become a substitute for buyer relevance, defensible expertise, and commercial capture. And HubSpot could survive that mistake because it already built products, audiences, distribution channels, and demand outside the blog. A smaller B2B company may not get that same margin for error. So look at the pages your team is working on now and ask which category they belong in. Keep, upgrade, reconnect, or retire. If you have already audited a content library like this, tell me what surprised you most and whether it was a high traffic page producing almost nothing or a low traffic page subtly influencing your best opportunities. And subscribe to Pronto Marketing for more investigations that turn marketing stories into decisions you can apply inside your own business.